The How to Train Your Dragon movies have been a film series I've wanted to talk about for a long ass time. It has been really daunting of how I do it. Do I talk about them all in a trilogy in one video? Do I review them all individually? What do I say about them? Right? Because these are movies that are well loved that I think a lot of people have talked about and said amazing things about them, but also not enough. But also somehow they're really underrated, but also very beloved. It's a whole mess of emotions. And more than any other review series, I really just encourage you to just go fucking watch these movies. Because I know deep down I will not do these movies justice. And it breaks my heart to say that because it's me reviewing movies I love. And that's the really daunting part of reviewing movies you love is a lot of people think that because you're a critic, talking about movies you love is easier than talking about movies you hate. It's really the opposite sometimes. When you sit down and talk about these movies you love, you really try your hardest to do them justice. And sometimes it's harder to put into words why you like something than why you hate something. It really is a thing in our society that people don't realize. This is a whole side tangent that I'm not going to get into, but it really is a thing that it is easier to hate than to love, and that is really no truer than even when it comes to reviewing movies. But with the new remake coming out, of course I had to talk about these movies, which I'm very not excited about that remake, but let's talk about this movie. So this first one was directed by couple people, Chris Sanders being one of them. Now, if you don't know Chris Sanders, he is a really great director. He did Lilo and Stitch, the original. He's also the voice of Stitch in the remake and in the TV shows and the sequels and the original movie. And he went on to do The Croods and some other stuff. And they did The Wild Robot. So, yeah, great director there. And this movie is phenomenally directed. It has another director, I'm forgetting his name, but they worked together, co-directed this movie. This movie is based on a series of books that are nothing like the books. I haven't read the books, but I think the authors openly said that. And so, that's normally some things that have... I bring that up because I don't really care too much about that fact, but I bring that up because it really is a good example of how good these movies are. Where... most movies that are turned into books, the books are always claimed and hailed as better, but no one gives a shit about the books. They only talk about these movies, and I don't think that's a disservice to the books, or more of just a compliment to these movies being that good. But yeah, this movie is the weakest of the trilogy. I used to not think that. I used to think it was 3, but I think this one, rewatching it, really is. First of all, the animation is the most dated. It came out in 2010. That's not really a fair criticism, though. I mean, it's great animation for the time. And it still looks good, but there's definitely, when you watch the sequels and you see the colors and all the details and variations on the dragon designs, it makes you watch this one with a little bit of it's a little bit of a downgrade. Alright. But it's not too bad. But I think what really hurts this one for me, before we get into my gushing positives, is the weird thing with the dragon book. The dragon book is held up as this major part of the movie for at least the first act, and it just feels like what should have been shorts explaining what these dragons are. If you wanted all those extra details, it didn't feel like it needed to be in the movie. But yet so much of the movie revolved around it, it just felt very awkward. Felt like they needed to throw you a lot of expositions about these dragons, but I felt like the dragon training sequences did enough of that to where those book sequences was okay. They were just a little bit too long, and had they been trimmed down, they'd be significantly better. But I think that's really it with this movie. What I really like about this movie is the conflict of Hiccup and his dad. It's a conflict we've seen a million times in movies of a father and son that really just don't get along and then have to come together by the end. But what makes it unique is in most of those scenarios, it's usually just the dad that's in the wrong, but Hiccup is in the wrong too. They're both in the wrong to some extent, where you got this older Viking who has a whole village to feed and look after. And so maybe he's not doing the best job of listening to his son, but his son is also causing damage and nearly getting people killed. So it's right, and he's also worried about his son getting killed in these scenarios because he's like frustrated, like, look, you, like you're gonna get yourself killed. Like even in the beginning of the movie, you see that, and so he's right to be worried and be concerned. Meanwhile, Hiccup's side of the story is like, I don't know how to tell my father about this dragon scenario. And then even when he is explaining the story of the dragons, it's like, with what he's seen, the people, undoubtedly Stoic has seen people die because of these dragons. So when he's trying to make him change his mind, change his whole worldview, it really is going to take a lot to do that, because for what this guy's seen, like, there is no way to change the fact that these are bloodthirsty monsters. It just, so it's not that he's unchangeable, it's that you have to highlight to him the real power and validity of this. I also really like that overall the message of this movie is a non-violence message, which is that, you have these dragons that they're murdering and killing, and they don't shy away from the fact that they kill them. Like, there's straight up lines about that. They don't show you the killing in the movie, but they say it, But at the end of the day, it's kind of showing that there is other ways of resolving conflicts without violence. And that's just a great message for kids and just our modern society. Which, by the way, these are the kind of kids movies that, yeah, they're kids movies, but I wouldn't really show them to a young child without an adult being present, because even this film, which is probably the weakest example of it, because this one definitely is the most kiddie. Toothless is scary in the movie. Dragons are mostly scary in the movie. Definitely some moments that you might want to be like close to your kid just in case. It's like, it really is that way. I do think also what's great about that it's just Hiccup and Toothless friendship is beautiful, and the way that's built upon is just really great. Really excellent sequences. I heard some from, I think it was from the filmmakers, or might have been some of the animators. They were talking about how they kind of modeled Toothless after a dog, but kind of his mannerisms after a cat. So kind of is the best mold of both those together, and you really see that with the animation, very expressive. The score to this movie by John Powell is just fucking fantastic. One of the best movie scores, like, maybe ever. Just so good. Just that This Is Burke theme, the flying theme, those two themes alone, fucking phenomenal. And just they really did a great job at world building this movie, where there's so much expansion for them to the sequels. This is like a movie that you watch by the end and you go, man, I'm dying for a sequel. And it kind of took a long time for a sequel to come out, because this movie came out in 2010, and then we didn't get a sequel until 2014. But good thing they took their time with that sequel, because we'll talk about that. But yeah, this movie is really good. I guess another flaw I should bring up, it doesn't bug me so much in the other sequels because it's toned down, but this one it definitely does. The celebrity voice acting of the side characters is fucking terrible. T.J. Miller is trash. Like, in everything he voice acts in. Like, genuinely, I don't know enough about T.J. Miller to say he's a good person. I don't really care. But just here as a voice actor, he's just fucking terrible. And just about everything he voice acts in. Then you got, like, Snot Loud and, like, Rough Nut and Tough Nut. And, like, all these voices. And they're just, like, you got all these big, stoic, Viking, Scottish accent voices, and then you got these really odd celebrity voices, and all their jokes are just lame. And none of them are funny. And you don't really grow to really like any of them by the end of the movie, so... The only one that worked was American Ferrera as Astrid, but that's because she's written to be like a real character in the movie. So, and I really enjoy that character and the romance that's built in this first movie. Definitely expanded upon and done a lot better in the sequels. But it's not like, again, I hate against this movie. It's just, sequels are really good. This is a great movie. With like a real emotional bond between a father and a son. That moment where Stoic says he's sorry to his son is just beautiful. The just animation is great. I mean, if a bit dated for the time, but still, it's just a really great movie that every time I rewatch it, it's not. This is, I would say the second one and the third one I tend to rewatch more, but every time I come back to this first one, it'll always be about 5 years or so, and I'll come back and be like, damn, that movie was really fucking good. I almost kind of forget how good it is. Not forget's not the right word, but you get what I mean. It's just really great stuff. So let me know your thoughts. Like, share, and subscribe.